We are delighted to have you join us for Slavery Remembrance Day 2020. Our short online film is a result of a collaboration between the National Museums Liverpool's Chief Angus Chukuemeka of the Liverpool Igbo community, and I'm delighted to say some of my students from Calderstones School. We hope you enjoy this insight into this long-standing event and its importance.
Jack.
Chief Angus, did you have a childhood figure that inspired you to be a part of the Slavery Remembrance Day movement?
Thank you, Jack. I would say no. I didn't know anything about slave trade or slavery, when I was a child. My only knowledge was when I was in the grammar school, and it was part of my history lessons. And the only aspect of that lesson which was taught was abolition, and it was about William Wilberforce. So there was no other information about the history of slave trade. All we knew about was those who were responsible for the abolition. And William Wilberforce was very prominent. But what inspired me was when I came in to Liverpool and I saw a lot of evidence that showed that Liverpool was involved in slave trade. And then in 1992, I was invited to join an advisory group to set up a slavery museum funded by the Moores family. And it was after that when I saw exactly what happened during slave trade, about how Black people were treated, the inhumane aspect of slave trade, that I was really inspired to know more about the history. And of course, in 1994, when the gallery was open, it was a gallery at first. Then we started celebrating it. I think that the celebration started in 1994, when the United Nations earmarked the August 23rd as a day to remember abolition of slave trade. So that's really how I got involved, and I have been involved since then. So really, that was my inspiration.
Thank you. Dara.
So do you think that the work people do in Liverpool is enough to show remembrance for the slaves?
I would say no. Not many people, even now, not many people know that know about the Slavery Remembrance Day. Of course, the museum has done a lot to publicize it. And of course, the International Slavery Museum is the first in the whole world, and it attracts visitors from all over the world. But if you ask around in the city, probably 1 in 10 would say yes, they know about it. They know about slavery, even though the city was heavily involved in slave trade and acquired all its wealth from slave trade. If you look around the city, you can see all the evidence there, the legacies and those buildings, beautiful buildings that have helped to make the city what it is. But not many people know about it, and it's until really we started having the slavery remembrance, started celebrating, that it became more widely known. So yes, my answer is really no, but we're trying now. I think the city is beginning to come to terms with its role during the slave trade. I think in year 2002, if I remember now correctly, it did apologize for its role in slave trade, and that was the city council. So that was really represented the voice of Liverpool. So in a sense, people are beginning to come to terms with the role that the city played in during slave trade, because the city acquired its wealth. What made the Liverpool city wealthy was slave trade. And at one time, it was the wealthiest city besides London in the whole country. I would say no, but yes now, because most people are now beginning to be aware of it. Yes.
Thank you. Rowan?
So, after the abolition of the slave trade, were the people who used to be slaves given any support to get back to the countries that they or their ancestors came from?
No, Black people lived in Liverpool even during the Roman times. Black people lived in the country and probably in Liverpool as well. And during slave trade, as I said before, Liverpool was heavily involved in slave trade. So there were slaves in Liverpool. At the same time, too, there were some freed slaves as well. During the slave trade, America had their civil war, the War of Independence. And most slaves were on the side of Britain during that war. So at the end of the war, when they came back to England, they became free. They were free slaves. So in Britain, they were free slaves as well as slaves as well, but they all mingled together. They were all subjected to the same rules and laws. And of course, as you know, they didn't have much civil rights. They were still, even though they were free, they were still treated as slaves. But the population grew, especially in London, the population grew to such a level that people became worried and concerned. And there was some action to deport them back to where they come from. I think there was an attempt to send some back to Sierra Leone. That didn't work so much. But in America, most of the soldiers who fought for America in the War of Independence, some of them were sent to Liberia. So really, Liberia was a country that was set up for freed slaves. Even though most of those slaves, when they went back to Liberia, could not adjust because the people who were already there had a different culture. And you can imagine slave trade, took about 400 years. And so most of them actually didn't even know where they come from. Whether any of the slaves actually went back to where they came from originally is difficult to say, but some did go back, and mainly a colony was established in Liberia by the Americans, where the freed slaves returned to.
Thank you. Yasmin?
When did you start the Walk Memorial in Liverpool?
Slavery Remembrance Walk started in the year 2011, and it is the start of remembrance activities. It takes us from the city center to the site where slave ships were repaired. It was a very important site in the city. So the walk actually is symbolic, just to remind the city about Remembrance Day and about the role that the city played during the slave trade. So when we get to the waterside, I do perform libation. Libation is a traditional African ceremony of remembrance and honoring of our ancestors. As you well know, that all those slaves were our ancestors who were taken from Africa, from their homes, from their families, and set to work in America. So I do perform libation to remember them, and I also remember our elders, remember those who ruled the country, because they gave permission for slavery to happen in the first place. So just remember them, and we do ask for the forgiveness of the enslaved ancestors. It's a typical African tradition because we do believe that when somebody dies, his spirit is still around, still with us. And when somebody dies in Africa, especially where I come from, we bury them in the compound. We don't bury them in the cemetery as you have here. We bury them in the compound because we still believe that their spirit is still around, and we do consult them during events in the family, weddings, christening, family meetings. We do perform libation to invite them to be part of that libation and to bless it. So the libation I perform also does is part of that culture, African culture, where we remember the sufferings of the slaves and also and celebrate the bravery of the slaves as well, because it is their bravery that started the liberation. Some of them didn't want to be enslaved, so they did fight very hard to free themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Andrew.
Chief Angus, how does it feel to be inspiring so many young Black people in today's society?
It feels really, it feels very satisfying in inspiring young people to know their history, to be familiar with their identity, because if you don't really have identity, those affect you in some way. So we do inspire young people to know their history, to know where they come from, and also to because we don't really talk so much about the negative side of enslavement. We also talk about positive side, the achievements that most Black people have made in spite of the disadvantages they went through, in spite of racism, in spite of discrimination, in spite of the not being treated properly. You all know what happened in America recently and what triggered the Black Lives Matters protests. In the midst of that, in spite of that, most Black people have achieved and reached great heights in their careers. So we do, when we talk about slave trade and its dark side, dark side of the history, we also talk about the positive side and the achievements that Black people have achieved, have made, in spite of the disadvantages that they had. And people like Barack Obama, who was an American president, the first Black president America's had, and many more other people who've achieved great heights. So it is, in a sense, gives the opportunity to inspire young people, to achieve and not to really dwell on the negative side of things, but to think positively.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Chief Angus, what impact do you think the Slavery Remembrance Day event has on the Liverpool community?
Well, Slavery Remembrance is not just an occasion when we remember or commemorate the terrible events of the slave trade and its legacies. It is an occasion when we make Black people aware of their experience and identity and the social and economic effect these have played in their lives. It's okay, they come to the Slavery Museum and they see all the horrible things that happened during slavery, but equally too, they know who they are, they think to know who they are. And they do realize that racism and inequality and all the legacies of slave trade of the legacies of slave trade, where as a result of slave trade, the people have problems with getting employment. People have problems having, some problems in education that have been said many times. They'll have a link to slavery, to slave trade. So it is a time for them to think about the experience they've had. And this experience have been driven by social, political, and economic policies in the country or in the city or everywhere in the world where they live and where they suffer racism or injustice.
Okay, thank you.
It's nice to know all of you, and I hope you've learned some history today. There'll be an opportunity in the future for you to learn more, I do hope. So I thank you for your questions, very interesting questions, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say a big thank you to Miss Evans of Calderstones School and to the group of pupils that have made this so interesting for us to do in our new online format. And a big thank you to Chief Angus, who has supported us here at National Museums Liverpool for so many years, and it's lovely to have you supporting us again this year in these very strange circumstances. So a big thank you to everyone for taking part, and I hope to see you all at SRD next year, 2021, hopefully face to face. Thank you.
Thank you.